If you're even vaguely associated with filmmaking, you have certainly heard of SmallRig by now. They make, those little arms, they make camera cages, they're making tripods now, which I've been kind of curious to check out. Someday they're gonna be making their own camera, I feel like, but today we're checking out this thing right here. This is actually the first light I've used or received from SmallRig, and it's not a review since they sent it to me for free. I think that's how that works, but I'm just giving you my kind of thoughts on this light. It's not just the first SmallRig light I've used from SmallRig, but it's one of their first lights in general, and it's their first light ever, I believe, that has Bluetooth connectivity and app control, but more on that later. So what does this thing have going for it? So, if you know me, I'm a Micro Four Thirds user. I like small cameras, I like small lenses, and I like small lights. And these portable LEDs are really handy, especially ones like the SmallRig, which are RGB. So you can, get your sort of normal daylight to tungsten levels, and the values actually go pretty high and pretty low. So you can go as low as 2500, pretty warm, and you can go as high as 8500, which is pretty cool, which, is a nice range. I think I've seen some go as low as 2000, high as 9000, but I've personally never had to go that high. A few other modes they've got here are HSI for your sort of RGB stuff, and then actual RGB, which you can set manually. And honestly, this is not something that every manufacturer does, is it has RGB and HSI depending on how you prefer to set things. Personally for me, HSI has always made a little bit more sense to me, but if you're into RGB, that's cool too. So one thing I was really curious with, and I'm always curious with, is how intuitive is a certain product, right? Can you use it right out of the box? I know everything's gonna have a manual, but do you need to read it? And in general, I found this thing pretty easy to use without looking at any kind of instructions. And I haven't used that many lights like this. So being able to just kind of pick it up and go and figure it out was kind of fun, and also pretty easy, except for one thing we'll talk about later. So yeah, let's go around this light and look at everything really quickly. So two sides are pretty much blank, the long sides, and then the bottom has your typical mounting point on it, which is great. Maybe would have been nice to have them on the sides too, but I don't know. Does SmallRig sell a cage for its light? Probably not, but still, maybe some extra mounting points on the sides would have been interesting, maybe kind of cool, but not the biggest deal in the world. And then on the other side is where all the good stuff is. So on this side, you've got all the good stuff. You got a USB-C. One of my biggest pet peeves with some of the lights I've owned in the past is it uses that old USB style charging thing, and it's just USB-C should be standard by now, but for whatever reason, it kind of isn't always. Next, you got this on and off button that's really kind of like positive on and off. And some other lights I've used have been like, hold the button until it turns on for 3 seconds and all this stuff. So really positive on, positive off is great. And then the wheel on the back here, which is a, you can press and hold it in, and you can scroll it to change various functions on the light. There's also, I'm gonna have to blind myself. Okay, let's turn that down for now. So you can see on the back here, we've got a nice series of like controls on this little panel. It's not like super high quality, like Apple, UI for this light, but it is certainly usable, and probably more usable than your average screen, honestly. Oh, and I love that it actually tells you the number of hours left on the battery, not just, 3 or 4 battery bars. Something that's, a little detail, but it goes a long way. So, of course, my initial thought was, okay, I can switch between the main modes, but how do I switch the settings inside each mode, like your intensity and your color temperature and things like that? Well, this wheel, as we talked about before, is also a button. So you just press that button and you move to, intensity, and then color temperature, and then you actually have a green magenta shift on your CCT setting, which is not always included. So being able to shift that a little bit is definitely kind of nice. Same thing for HSI. You got hue, saturation, and intensity. And then you got RGB, which has basically the ability to control each individual color and brightness of each, I was gonna say pixel, of each like color thing. I don't know. I'm not a super technical guy. So if you want this to be a super technical review, you're looking in the wrong place. But you know, you can go in here and affect the red, green, blue, and white diodes, which is how this light and pretty much all RGBs make every single color that they can make. And then FX is cool because you've got your effect, your intensity, and your frequency. So some things have effects. Okay, let me turn this off. Some lights tend to have effects that you can't really change. They're just kind of built in. Something I appreciate about this light right here is that we got, you know, a little modifier on here to make that light a little bit softer. Just a rubber sort of little housing that you put it right into and you're good to go. So, you know, oh God, it once you get it in, it's good, but it takes just a second to sort of make sure it's settled in the correct way. And so yeah, once you've got this thing in here, the light is definitely a lot softer coming from this light. It's not like a softbox or anything, but it'll do in a pinch. Oh, and this has something that I actually find pretty useful, which is it has some magnets in here. So boom, you can stick it to stuff. And for me, who films in like this garage or in all kinds of random places, sometimes solid piece of metal is all you got. So you could get your SmallRig clamps out, and I'm sure SmallRig would love for you to buy some of their clamps, but if you don't want to, you can always just stick it to a random buzzsaw and you're good to go. So how does that compare to this thing? This is the F7 pocket light, and it's something I've had for a long time. What do I think about this compared to this? Well, first off, this is a little thicker, but a lot smaller overall. Just different use cases. I can definitely see this being used because it's got a little bit more output, but honestly, this is the light I end up taking with me a lot of the times for little detail shots of rings, at weddings. It fits in my bag really nicely. And again, it's like almost the size of my camera, at least one of them. And so having the ability to sneak this in a bag and take it with me is super nice. And I'm sure you're seeing a couple ring shots I've done with it now, light passing over it. Sometimes I'll set it to like a really like desaturated red, making some kind of soft, barely pink light, and being able to dial stuff in super quickly on the light or with the app is super helpful. And it's something I mean, this SmallRig light is definitely going in my wedding bag permanently just for the detail shots, because sometimes you get there and it's a dark hotel room and a cloudy day and you got to make those details pop somehow. And the way I'm going to be doing that in the future is with the SmallRig light. So it's time. What is the thing that I had to look in the manual to figure out? Well, that was some of the Bluetooth capabilities of this light. So much like Aperture, this has an app associated with it where you can control this and potentially many lights like this to sync them up, choose color, all kinds of stuff like that. And I think that's pretty cool. I know a lot of companies have been working on and promising apps like this and have tried and failed. So I guess let's check out how that app really works. I've got my phone over here. Now the thing about the app is I just like how many options it gives you. So like with the CCT, for example, you got this little slider. Yay, it's pretty fun to just like look at the screen, sort of like feel it out of like where your color temperature should be. Yeah, about there. Or you can get really precise with the like plus and minuses. Same with the brightness, you know, you can just slide it up and down. Like, where's it look good? Or you could be like, oh, I remembered it was on 55 earlier, and it would just go right there. Same with the HSI. You can use, you know, just this color wheel thing that's on here, or you can mess with the actual sliders at the bottom, and again, just type in those numbers. So pretty cool, just the number of options this thing gives you. You guys know I really like to get deep into these things, and I could have gone a lot deeper on the light, a lot deeper on the app, which has two other modes. One is a light capture and one is a light effect capture, which I don't even know how that works, but it's got some really cool potential. So let's get to some final conclusions here. The RM75 is a RGB light, does pretty much everything right, doesn't have any missteps, but it's not revolutionizing the game either. It's got a good price, a good build, a lot of features, and a really, really promising app, but it's not going to change your life. It's really solid. If you're on the market for a light like this, it's really good. And so I guess really the only downside I can think of is I wish SmallRig would have a few more lights out right now. This app is really cool, and I can't wait to see what they do next.